All right, people. So I wanted to make a video about this for a minute, and it's proven to be very difficult. Now, there's some interesting reasons as to why I've struggled so hard to find the information I wanted to present this video to you. But I've basically put together everything that I could possibly find about David's streaming numbers. And I really wanted to just get an understanding of just how much, just how much this sordid affair with this dead body that was found in the trunk of his car has actually impacted his streaming numbers, and really an estimate of just how much money that David might have made in the aftermath of this incident. So I'm going to start off by just showing you a TikTok that I've seen going around that's interesting, where a young girl kind of speaks on the issue.
Of hearing.
Oh, there it is. Where a young girl speaks on the issue and says how crazy
I
it
am
is
so
that
sick.
his streaming numbers have actually gone up in the midst of this going on. So let's see what she had to say, and then I'll show you some of what I found.
Of hearing what feels like every day a new story about a young girl or woman being unalived by a man. Most, if not all of you, have probably heard of the artist David and what he did to a young girl by the name of Celeste Hernandez. And you guys know how the fan bases of these rappers tends to be, so all the memes, jokes, and victim blaming has already begun. But I think the dumbest argument in David's defense that I have heard thus far is that she lied about her age, so he didn't know how young she was. I'm sorry, but are you really going to look me in my face and say that a 12-year-old, because they met when she was 12, managed to convince this man that she was 19? So either he was faking about not knowing her age, or he believes that women in general are so naive and cognitively underdeveloped that a 19-year-old could very well have the mentality of a 12-year-old. Mind you, neither reason is good, but let's be real, he knew how old she was. I think the comments that infuriated me the most and really put the icing on the cake derogatory were the ones talking about how they were so upset that David had made a mistake that has ruined his life and he's only 21. This man got to pursue his art, perform for thousands of people, all while dragging a casket from show to show where fans could write letters to their dead loved ones. He got to live out his dreams while simultaneously disrespecting this girl. It's not his life that was ruined. It was Celeste's life that was ruined and cut short. And how disgusting is it that women's lives are looked at as being so inconsequential and so obsolete that they have managed to make him a victim in this situation. Young girls do not deserve to be punished for being naive enough to think that it could work out romantically with an older guy. Young girls do not deserve to have their lives taken just because they lack proper guidance or have certain familial trauma that may have made them more susceptible to these types of situations. I'm glad that her family finally has answers, but I am absolutely devastated about what happened to her. Screw David, rest in peace, Celeste.
So she makes a really interesting point there, as far as like this guy was really able to really live out his dreams. He was playing enormous stages. He was doing billions of streams.
Something that I really think women need.
She's coming back for more. He was doing real high level artistry. I'm not condoning the things that he put out there in his art, but he was basically performing at the highest level. Now, it appears that his streaming numbers have gone absolutely through the roof ever since this incident came to light. Okay, there's been massive growth in his streaming numbers. So he was already pushing good numbers, all right? He was already doing 33 million monthly listeners on Spotify. Interestingly, the number of monthly listeners was actually going down steadily until this is Celeste's birthday on September the 7th. And then the body's discovered and the numbers just went absolutely crazy. So he's now sat around 38 million monthly listeners. It's gone through the roof. But he was already a very established artist who was doing very well for himself. And apparently, he actually received his biggest streaming day on Spotify on September the 21st. 12.1 million streams in just one day on Spotify. And his Petal to Thorns project has also re-entered the Billboard 200 albums charts. People saying, I feel like people often use moments like these to try and say this is a sign an artist is being rewarded for the terrible things they've allegedly done. But I think this is an exception, considering he left hints pointing towards his alleged actions all over his music, and people want to dissect that. I also do genuinely believe the majority of people had no idea who he was prior to this incident and are just trying to figure it out. But he had over 30 million monthly listeners on Spotify before this popped up. So he was already a big artist. Now, as I said before, that Petals to Thorns project has indeed re-entered the Billboard 200 albums charts. Okay, it's actually on the charts right now. Okay, if we can beat this paywall at 184. It peaked at 105 previously. This is the 4th week on the charts, and it's re-entered the charts off the back of all of this crazy stuff. But David's Billboard chart history isn't super impressive compared to some of the big artists that we've covered on this channel, but he was putting numbers up on Billboard. So his Withered project actually went 13 on a chart, which was peak position 50, chart date. Was that the albums charts? So that had charted previously. He also had 3 songs that charted at 75, 60, and 33. That was Feel It, Here With Me, and Romantic Homicide. So he was an established artist. Now, there is a website that is actually tracking his streams and the ongoing numbers. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I found it very difficult to find historical data and estimates related to people's streaming numbers, but his streams have gone pretty crazy. So he's now, today, sat at 5.579 billion total streams on Spotify. This is a serious guy, a serious artist. He's got over 1 billion streams on Romantic Homicide, and it's doing 2.5 million daily streams while this is all going on. He's got 1.5 billion views on Here With Me, and that's getting 2.23 million views a day, and this catalog is absolutely rocking right now. Even his lesser known songs and live versions, they're still racking up thousands of streams. So I've been trying desperately to get an estimation of how much money that he might have made since this all happened, and I've got a very, very rough outline for you guys, okay? So this is a more general royalties calculator, which we can look at for David. So we can search him up in this royalty calculator, David, okay? And what's crazy is that I don't know why we're getting Motley Crue for all of a sudden. Hang on. Okay, this website kind of sucks because every time I type his name in there, it just goes to a different artist. I don't know whether that's intentional, but I have here in my little research document that apparently when I searched this up the other day and it worked, it said that he was getting $122,000 per month and $1.47 million a year from Spotify streams. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. I think that might even be a lowball estimate. Okay, but I've found some archives of different things, okay, of his career, of his history, all of that stuff. So I'm going to show that to you now, and I'm going to put an estimate on how much he's made from Spotify since this happened. Okay, so look, this is an archived snapshot of his streaming numbers on Spotify back in 2023. So he had just passed 1 billion total streams, 1.338 billion total streams. Romantic Homicide was on 612 million streams. So this was already a hit record. It was already a hit song. It was already very successful. And essentially, he was popping on a whole other level at this point, okay? Now, the first web archive snapshot that I was able to find from before this happened, it wasn't right before the body was found, but it was kind of in the month before. So this is actually his streaming numbers on the 2nd of August 2025. And as you can see, he was already having monumental success here, okay? He'd already passed 5 billion Spotify streams. Romantic Homicide was on 1.6 billion streams. Okay, he was getting 900,000 daily listeners, but that's more than doubled now that we know all of the bad stuff that's been going on behind the scenes. But he was hitting 1.6 billion streams on Romantic Homicide, 1.5 billion streams on Here With Me, 500 million streams on Feel It. So he was doing some crazy numbers in August. Now that is the most recent archive that I can find of his numbers from before the murder took place. Okay, and then arguably we could actually say that maybe the numbers went up a little bit between this and the following month. Okay, maybe there's a few million streams to definitely account for over the last month. But if we look at these numbers now and we compare them now, okay, we can actually see that David was doing much higher numbers. So these are the September 12th numbers, the September the 11th numbers, just a couple of days after the body was found. And what's really interesting about this is that this is kind of just that first initial boost. You can see these songs, they're getting millions of views. They're getting more than they were before. So Romantic Homicide's on 1.664 billion streams, and they're getting 1.3 million daily streams. Even more streams on Here With Me, 1.6 million, 1.2 million for Feel It. So the numbers were going up. They were already on the way up, but then they went crazy. And as we saw already, as of today, these songs are doing multiple million streams a day. 2.5 million for Romantic Homicide, 2.232 for Here With Me, 1.496 million dailies for Feel It. The catalog's going crazy. And as of now, he has 5.579 billion total views on Spotify. And his Spotify is it's over 38 million monthly listeners. It's actually crazy. So what I wanted to do is just kind of like dissect this difference, okay? So obviously, if now we're looking at a number of 5.5 billion streams, okay? So if I take that number, okay, and I subtract the amount of streams, even if we're being generous and we go with, let's say, the streams on September the 12th or September the 11th, okay? So if you do the maths between those two numbers, you get a whopping 130 million streams, 209,671 streams. And I found a website called Royalty Calculator, and that's not include. This isn't going to include iTunes. It's not going to include YouTube. This is just Spotify because it's been very difficult to find the numbers on these other platforms. They don't really publish them publicly. But even if we take that number, okay, we take that number. So if we take that number and put it into this music royalty counter, 130 million streams on Spotify, 209,671, that would be earnings of over $442,000 just since the 12th of September. Now, I couldn't find the Apple Music numbers or the Amazon Music numbers, but YouTube Music, we could potentially try and work that one out because we can actually look at David's view stats, which is very interesting because it says the views from September the 21st to the 23rd are combined due to the YouTube API limitations or negative views from unlisted and private videos. And they've been speculating that there was about 6 videos that were removed from David's channel after the news came out publicly. So it's going to be, it's kind of hard to determine exactly how many views occurred for each of these days because there were views removed, videos removed, and on these websites it counts as a removal of views. But he's basically doing an average of 18 million weekly views. So essentially, the body was found around 18 days ago. So even if we just took a daily average of 2.683 million views, if we just took that daily average, all right, and we say, all right, how do I do this? How do I do this? So let's say we take that daily average of, how many was it? 2.68 million views. Let's take the exact number. We take that and we multiply it by 18. Actually, we'll do it by 17 because if the body was discovered on the 8th, that still gives a whopping 45,619,704 views just on the YouTube side alone. So if we throw that into the royalty calculator on YouTube Music, all right, that is another whopping $335,000, okay, and if we combine that with the Spotify streams, we're now on $778,000 and $17.71, and that's not including Apple Music and Amazon Music. So I'll keep it real with you. I actually think that it's highly possible that he's generated $1 million in streaming revenue in the just over 2 weeks since this body was discovered, which is honestly absolutely wild. Not only does that just go to show you just how profitable YouTube and music streaming can be when you really got the numbers on your side, but it just goes to show you just how much can be made off of this tragic news. You know, he was already having a lot of motion as a musician. Who knows how much the numbers would have been had it not been for this horrible news, but it is looking like it is highly possible if Apple Music and Amazon Music are anywhere close to the Spotify and YouTube numbers, chances are he probably has made $1 million since this news came out. And it sounds like he was making a lot of money already. I mean, who knows? He could have been putting away $1 million a month before this happened. He could have been putting away a whole lot of money before this happened, getting seriously big numbers. But for me, that is actually crazy just to think, just based on those maths, exactly how much money he's actually made since this incident happened. He was already making a lot of bread, but now it's taken things to a whole nother level. And everybody's just waiting to see whether or not there's going to be an arrest, or whether there's going to be any updates. I'm seeing a lot of people saying, look, if the cops ain't arrested him even this far based on everything that's happened, maybe they don't have the evidence. It might not be the case that they can even convict him of this. So I'll keep you guys updated. You know, if things aren't looking like he did it, if we're looking like there's other evidence, alternative narratives, I will be sure to share that with you guys. Okay, I'm unbiased. We've all been very emotionally hurt and bruised by everything that we've seen, especially concerning a young little girl who really had a whole life ahead of her. But I'm really all about the facts. So I will be keeping track of everything that goes on. I think this is probably the last video I'm going to make about it for a minute, unless any new information comes out, because this was the last thing that I really wanted to get my teeth into and just try and work out. But yeah, $778,000. Okay, it is actually crazy to even think of the amount of money that's been generated by his music at this point. So he definitely has turned over multiple millions for the record label. I mean, shoot, even if we go just lifetime, if we go, let's just say if we go lifetime views, all right, and he was having, let's see, so he's got 1.185 billion views total on YouTube, okay? So if he's got that many lifetime on YouTube, wow, all right? And then if you take the Spotify numbers, which today sit at 5.57 billion, okay, if we take those and put all of that into the royalty calculator for his career earnings, wow. And this isn't including Apple Music, Amazon Music, or shows. He's earned $27 million, 683,682.50 I actually can't even believe how high those numbers are. That's crazy. $27 million is wild. I actually can't believe that these guys, I mean, my man needs to drop an album at this point. But yeah, that's the update, man. This guy was making a whole lot of money from music. He had his whole life ahead of him, his whole career ahead of him, but it might be over with if the police can actually find proof that he did kill that girl. And if they can't, who knows? Maybe he's going to keep going with his career. Maybe the numbers are going to go even higher. He could become the OJ Simpson of the music game. I don't know where things are going to go from here. This whole thing has been very dark, very alarming, and I think that we will soon get an update. People are saying maybe an arrest tomorrow. I spoke to Sedi Nash earlier. He was saying maybe an arrest on Monday. He had some new info that I hadn't heard, so I might look into that a little bit closer, but I am also enjoying covering other stuff. Go and check out my video on NBA YoungBoy shooter Ben 10 stalking Memo 600 through the streets of Baton Rouge. That was a crazy update. And anything else you guys want me to cover, let me know. Otherwise, I will let you know when there's a big update on this, and I'll be finding some other stuff to talk about for a little bit. So thanks so much for tapping in, keeping up with the content. I will catch you in the next video. Peace.